Chapter 25. Glossary. Definition of occult terms. Alkahest, an element which dissolves all metals, amid which all terrestrial bodies may be reduced into their ens primum of the original matter of which they are formed. It is a power which acts upon the astral forms of all things, capable of changing the polarity of their molecules, and thereby to dissolve them. The magic power of the free will is the highest aspect of the true alkahest. In its lowest aspect, it is a visible fluid, able to dissolve all things, not yet known to modern chemistry. Alchemy, a science by which things may not only be decomposed and recomposed, but by which their essential nature may be changed and raised higher, or be transmuted into each other. Chemistry deals with dead matter alone, but alchemy uses life as a factor. Everything is of a threefold nature, of which its material and objective form is its lowest manifestation. There is, for instance, immaterial spiritual gold, ethereal fluid, and invisible astral gold, and the solid visible material and earthly gold. The two former, so to say, the spirit and soul of the latter, and by employing the spiritual powers of the soul, we may induce changes in them that may become visible in the objective state. Certain external manipulations may assist the powers of the soul in their work, but without the possession of the latter, the former will be perfectly useless. Alchemical processes can, therefore, only be successfully undertaken by one who is an alchemist, by birth or by education. Everything being of a threefold nature, there is a threefold aspect of man: the purification of the mind, thought, and will, the ennobling of all substances. And as it leaves the realm of the living soul and steps down to dead matter, it ends in the science of modern chemistry of the present day. True alchemy is an exercise of the magic power of the free spiritual will of man, and can therefore not be practiced by anybody except by him who has been reborn in the spirit. A quastor, a being created by the power of the imagination, i.e., by a concentration of thought upon the akasa, by which an ethereal form may be created. Elementals, succubi and incubi, vampires, etc. Such imaginary, but nevertheless real forms may obtain life from the person whose imagination they are created, and under certain circumstances, they may even become visible and tangible. Astrolite, the same as the archaos, a universal and living ethereal element, still more ethereal and highly organized than the akasa. The former is universal. The archaos only cosmic, these pertaining to our solar system. It is at the same time an element and a power containing the character of all things. It is the storehouse of memory for the great world, the macrocosm, whose contents may become re-embodied and reincarnated in objective forms. It is the storehouse of memory of the little world, the microcosm of man, from which he may recollect past events. It exists uniformly throughout the interplanetary spaces, yet it is more dense and more active around certain objects on account of their molecular activity, especially around the brain and spinal cord of human beings. It is this aura around the nerve cells and nerve tubes by which a man is enabled to catch impressions made upon the astral aura of the cosmos, and thereby to read in the astral light. Clairvoyancy. It forms the medium for the transmission of thought. Without such a medium, no thought could be transferred to a distance. It may be seen by the clairvoyant. And as each person has an astral aura of its own, a person's character may read in his astral light by those who are able to see it. In the case of a child who has not yet generated any special characteristics, that emanating aura is milk white, but in the adult there is always, upon this fundamental color, another one, such as blue, green, yellow, red, dark red, and even black. Every living nerve has its astral aura, every mineral, every plant or animal, and everything of life, and the glorified body of the spirit is made to shine by its light. Astrum. This term is frequently used by the author and means the same as astral light, or the special sphere of mind belonging to each individual, giving to each thing its own specific qualities, constituting, so to say, its world. That's why we can't be so absolute about our dream dictionaries and stuff like that, is because the symbolic associations, feeling, emotion, thought, aren't exactly the same with the group from one person to another. Kabbalah, Kabbalas, Lemurus, the astral bodies of men who died a premature death, that is to say, who were killed or killed themselves before their natural term of life was over. They may be more or less self-conscious and intelligent according to the circumstances in which they lived and died. They are earthbound suffering souls of the dead, wandering in the sphere of the earth's attraction. Kamaloko. Or is it just plain Kamalok, the desire sphere? Until the time arrives when they would have died according to natural law, when the separation of the higher principles from the lower one takes place. They imagine to perform bodily actions, while in fact they have no physical bodies, but act in their thoughts. But their bodies appear to them as real as ours appear to us. They may be under certain necessary conditions communicating with man through mediums, or directly through a man's own mediumistic organization. Now, I would say that there are certain entities that attach to some of these things, but there's sort of a real energy, legacy, and memory that can be worked with without necessarily either the dead or some spirit being involved. Corpora super calastia. Forms that can only be seen by the highest spiritual perception. They are not ordinary astral forms, but the refined and intelligent elements of the same. Divination, the act of foreseeing future events by means of the soul's own light. Prophecy. Now, prophecy is being spiritually gifted, so divination, forming a spiritual connection to your to your thinking out things, or allowing yourself to experience things, might be a broader definition, because not everybody who does what you might call divination, it says, that you can predict the future or the unseen, or, that's what they're trying to force knowledge of, right? Elementals, spirits of nature, substantial but for those who have not the inner sight, invisible beings of an ethereal nature, living in elements of air, water, earth, or fire. They have no immortal spirits, but they are made of the substance of the soul and are of various grades of intelligence. Their characters differ widely. They represent in their natures all states of feeling. Some are of a beneficial and others of a malicious nature. Elementaries, the astral corpses of the dead, the ethereal counterpart of the once living person, which will sooner or later be decomposed into its astral elements, as the physical body is dissolved into the elements to which it belongs. These elementaries have, under normal conditions, no consciousness of their own, but they may receive vitality from a mediumistic person, and thereby for a few minutes be, so to say, galvanized back into life and artificial consciousness, when they may speak and act and apparently remember things as they did during life. They are very often observed by elementals who use them as masks to represent deceased persons and to mislead the credulous. Okay, I was waiting for some clear statement by the author on that. The elementaries of good people have little cohesion and evaporate soon. Those of wicked persons may exist a long time. Those of suicides, etc., have a life and consciousness of their own. As long as the division of principles has not taken place, this division takes place in consequence of the opposite attraction of matter and spirit. After it is accomplished, in the astral body will dissolve into its elements, and the spirit enter into the spiritual state. These are the most dangerous. So we were talking about the MERS. Isn't there a holiday, or is it Lamia or something like that? Alestrum. Something in May in Rome where the head of the household gets up in the middle of the night and he spits beans and anyways. Alestrum, the astral body, doppelganger, okay, of man, his conscious ethereal counterpart, that may watch over him and warn him of the approach of death or some other danger. The more the physical body is active and conscious of external things, the more is the astral body stupefied. The sleep of the body is the awakening of the avestrum. During that state, it may communicate with the avestra of other persons, or with those of the dead. It may go to certain distances from the physical body for a short time, but if its connection with that body is broken, the latter dies. Erodemium, a pictorial or allegorical representation of some future events, visions and symbolic dreams that may be produced in various ways. There are 3 classes of dreams from which may arise 4 more mixed states of dreams. The 3 pure classes are: 1, dreams that result from physiological conditions; 2, dreams that result from psychological conditions and astral influences; 3, dreams are caused by spiritual agency. Only the latter are worthy of great consideration, although the former may occasionally indicate important changes in the planets to which they belong. For instance, a dream of a nail being driven into the head may predict apoplexy. Flaga, spirits knowing the secrets of man, familiar spirits, spirits that may be seen in mirrors and reveal secret things. Well, any medium, right? But through scrying is basically the idea. But perhaps without the practice, a person can experience that easily through reflective surfaces. And that's part of the thing about crystals. See, these people with the faith in the crystals. Homunculi, artificially made human beings generated from the sperm without the assistance of the female organism. Homunculi, imagincula. Homunculi, imagincula. Okay. Images made of wax, clay, wood, etc., that are used in the practice of black magic, witchcraft, and sorcery, to stimulate the imagination and to injure an enemy, are to affect an absent person in an occult manner at a distance. And is poppet the most common word used for that? Or are people just say voodoo doll? Elec magnum, the specific healing power of medicine. Impressions, effects of a passive imagination, which may give rise to various bodily affections, diseases, malformations, stigma, monsters, hair lips, acaphelly, asphelly, etc., moles, marks, etc. Now, there can be psychosomatic harm, but don't look for moles and birth defects or whatever, and then say, oh, it's marked by his witchcraft, and, she's a witch, burn her. I don't like that mark over there. She has incubus and succubus, male and female parasites, growing out of the astral elements of man or woman in consequence of a lewd imagination. 2. Astral forms of dead persons, elementaries, being consciously or instinctively attached to such persons, manifesting their presence in tangible, if not visible, forms, and having carnal intercourse with their victims. 3. Astral bodies of sorcerers and witches visiting men or women for immoral purposes. The incubus is male and succubus female. Lefas. Astral bodies of plants. They may be rendered visible out of the ashes of plants after the latter have been burned. Lemurs, elementals of the air. I like the term sliff better. Elementaries of the deceased. Rapping and table tipping spirits, producing physical manifestations, are, at least they're interpreted that way. Magic. Wisdom, the science and art of consciously employing the invisible occult powers to produce visible effects. Will, love, and imagination are magic powers that everybody possesses, and he who knows how to develop them and to use them consciously and effectually is a magician. Melusina, elemental spirits of water, usually appearing in female forms, but which may also take the forms of fishes or snakes. They have souls but no spiritual principle, but they may obtain the latter by entering into a union with man, the fourth principle uniting with the fifth. The human shape is their true form. Their animal forms are assumed. They are also called undines, and also called nymphs. And I like the definition of magic, the art and science of religion, religion being the relationship with all, spirituality is a fragment, psychology is a fragment, and you can also say magic as an intentional changes in consciousness, so consciousness work basically. And sometimes that enables certain things to happen. Otherwise, it's like, oh, I could get this done because I did this consciousness work and I could never get it done before. It's like, okay, yeah. Macrosmos, the universe. Macrocosm, usually, right? The great world, including all visible and invisible things. Microcosm, the little world, usually applied to man. A smaller world is a microcosm if compared with a larger one. Our solar system is a microcosm in comparison with the universe, and a macrocosm if compared with the earth. Man is a microcosm in comparison with the earth, and a macrocosm if compared with an atom of matter. An atom of matter is a microcosm because in it are all the potentialities out of which a macrocosm may grow, if the conditions are favorable. Everything contained in a microcosm in a state of development is contained in the microcosm in germ. Now, one of the Greek ways of speaking about divinity acknowledged the fact that, like, for example, we don't really see, the brain sees. It's the thing that sees when the eyes are fine. The eyes could be fine, but something could be wrong with the brain, and that affects how it sees or not sees. So everything in the external that's not us we know about and interpret through ourselves. So that's where the whole as above, so below stuff comes from. Monstra, unnatural, usually invisible beings that may spring from corruption or from unnatural sexual connection, from the astral putrefaction of sperms, or from the effects of morbid imagination. All such and similar things may pass from the merely subjective into the objective state, because objective and subjective are relative terms and refer rather to our capacity to perceive them than to any essential qualities of their own. What may be merely subjective to a person in one state of existence may be fully objective to one in another state. For instance, in delirium tremens, insanity, subjective hallucinations appear to the patient, while during our sleep, all that seemed to be objective to us in our waking state disappears and ceases to be objective to our consciousness. Mumia. The essence of life contained in some vehicle. Parts of the human, animal, or vegetable bodies, if separated from the organism, retain their vital power of their specific action for a while, as it is proved by the transplantation of skin, by vaccination, poisoning by infection, from corpses, dissection wounds, infection from ulcers, etc. Bacteria are such vehicles of life. Blood, excrements, etc. may contain vitality for a while after having been removed from the organism, and there may still exist some sympathy between such substances and the vitality of the organism, and by acting upon the former, the latter may be affected. Now, we know more about decay, we know more about microorganisms and stuff now, but a case is cited in which a plastic operation was performed on a man's nose by transplanting on it a piece of skin taken from another person. The artificial nose answered its purpose for a long time, until the person from whom the piece of skin was taken died, when the nose is said to have rotted. Cases are also known in which persons have felt a pain caused by a heavy pressure of a stone upon a recently amputated leg, that without their knowledge had been buried, and the pain instantly ceased when the stone was removed. This sympathy existing between man's consciousness and his body is the cause of the astral form of a dead person who may keenly feel any injury inflicted upon his corpse. The spirit of a suicide may feel the effects of a post-mortem examination as severely as if he had been cut up alive. And there are spiritual teachings related to that. If you don't preserve your dignity as far as instructions of what to do when you die, one's going to feel the effects of that. Since ancient times, it's nothing modern per se that's become a teaching. All this is neither surprising nor mysterious, if we remember that all things are nothing but will, substance, rendered objective, and that the harmony existing between two parts belonging to the same quality of will does not necessarily cease to exist when the two parts have become separated. Nanu Fereni, elementals of the air, sliphs, Nympha, elementals of the water plants. Occultism, the science that deals with things that transcend sensual, material perception and are generally little known in this country. It deals especially with the effects that cannot be explained by the universally known laws of nature, but whose causes are still a mystery to those who have not penetrated deep enough into the secrets of nature to understand them correctly. What may be occult to one person may be fully comprehensible to another. The more the spirituality and inner intelligence of man grows, and the more it becomes free of the attractions of sense, the more will his spiritual perceptive powers grow and expand, and the less will the process of nature appear occult to him. Occult, in fact, is that which transcends the power of the external senses, transcendent possibilities of man to perceive it, but which, is fully perceptible and comprehensible to the inner spiritual understanding, after the inner senses of man have become unfolded and active. Penates are penates, penates, layers, lars, herk, herch, etesi, milici, spirits of the elements of fire, as well as imps, hobgoblins, etc., attached to particular places, haunted houses, etc. They may produce noises, physical manifestations, poltergeists, stone throwing, etc. That which exists visibly and tangibly for us in the material world exists also visibly and tangibly in the firmament, the world of mind, of the elemental spirits of nature. Phantasmata, creations of thought. Spirits, living in solitary places, as they may be produced by the imagination of man and be able to communicate with him. Hallucinations. Well, two words that relate to that, you have the golem and we have the tulpa. Neither of which are Hindu words. Rupa, an Eastern term form, Kamarupa, form caused by desire. Mayavi Rupa, elusive form caused by the will and imagination of a person who constantly projects his own astral reflection as that of any other form. Salamanders, spirits living in the element of fire. Somnia, one dreams, two, the invisible and astral influences that one person may thus make another person dream while what he desires him to perceive, or the astral body of one sleeping person may converse with that of another, or such astral bodies of living persons may be impressed or be made to promise to do certain things after awakening, and they will keep such promises when they awake. Spirit, this term is used very indiscriminately, a fact that may cause great confusion in its true meaning, spirit life, but the word spirit and spirits is also used very often to signify invisible but nevertheless substantial things, forms, shapes, and essences, elementals and elementaries, hades, ghosts, apparitions, angels, and devils. Spirit means conscious will, and in this aspect everything is the expression of its own indwelling spirit, but spirit without organization of substance is without individuality, and, like a breath of air, only after the spirit has become organized as a substantial being within a living form can it exist and have as an individual being. Spiritus, animals, astral power, by which the will of the higher principles in man is executed on the sensual and material plane. Instincts. Theosophia, divine self-knowledge, the true understanding, supreme wisdom acquired by practical experience, by which it is eminently distinguished from merely speculative philosophy. Theosophy is not any new creed or any system of philosophy. Neither can it be taught by one person to another. It is not any knowledge relating to any external thing, but to the self-knowledge of the awakened spirit in man, i.e., the knowledge by which God in man knows that he is. Well, God is in me, and I am in God, but that doesn't mean that I am God. God's just omnipresent, closer than oneself, that sort of thing. So monotheism kind of explains that. But because like if part of us is a God, then whether we know it or not, it's still going to be, right? Umbratiles, shadows, astral appearances becoming visible and sometimes tangible, modern spiritualistic form manifestations, the Skinleka, or wraith, or the German Doppelganger of a person. They may become visible by attracting ethereal material elements from the body of a medium or any other person in whom there is little cohesion of his lower elements in consequence of some disease or on account of inherited peculiarities of his organization, or they may attract them from the surrounding atmosphere. Their life is borrowed from the medium, and if it were prevented to return to the medium, the latter would be paralyzed or die. Vampires. Astral forms living at the expense of persons from whom they draw vitality and strength. They may be either the astral bodies of living persons or such that have died, but which still cling to their physical bodies buried in the grave, attempting to supply them with nutriment drawn from the living, and thereby to prolong their own existence. Such cases are especially well known in the southeast of Europe, Moldavia, Serbia, Russia, etc. Vordlak. Well-authenticated cases of vampires may be found in Maximilian Pert's works. The key to the understanding of the nature of vampires is that the sensitive sphere of man, or of the visible body, is, so to say, nothing more than the kernel of the fruit, extends far beyond the limits of the body, but a constant interchange takes place between the two. Consequently, the body of the dead, in whom still a remnant of the astral life exists, may vampirize the living, and still more may this take place among the living themselves. Xena, Nephidi, elemental spirits that give men occult powers over visible matter and feed on their brains, often causing thereby insanity. They assist physical mediums to lift material objects without any visible means. A great number of physical mediums have become insane. And there's a lot more terms and stuff that a person could go into, but that's what this book is listed.